Welcome to Watermark's Church Leadership Podcast, a conversation with church leaders for church leaders. My name is John McGee. Thanks so much for joining us today. Well, hey friends, today we are talking about how to onboard both new employees and volunteers. We've got two great guests. Josiah Jones, he is the Director of Volunteers for The Porch, which is our young adult ministry, and Lainey Eberhardt, new last name. Congratulations on your wedding.
Thank you. 2 months
your
today.
Marriage, yes.
Whoa.
And Lainey is our Director of Hiring, or Hiring Coordinator, I guess probably is your title here. But more importantly, in terms of personally to the McGee family, Lainey has been our youngest daughter's small group leader for 7 years, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
So Lainey has walked with our daughter from junior high, from 6th grade, all the way to this year. So Lainey, we're really, really grateful for you, friend. Love what you do around the church, but for us personally, you've meant a lot to our family. So thank you. Thank you. Okay, guys, this is being recorded 3 days. 3 days before the Super Bowl. Yes. So lots of, I'm surrounded by green and red here. So Josiah lived in Kansas City. Big fan.
Chiefs.
Big Chiefs fan. And then, unfortunately, Ashley, who is our director, does not have a microphone, but her dad actually played for the Eagles. And so she is a massive Eagles fan. She lives and works in Dallas, and her whole cube is just decked out with Eagles.
Respect.
She is.
I respect it.
Behind enemy lines. And so there was a lot of banter before. And so when this plays, it'll be fun to see who's got the bragging rights. So I'm surprised how many people care in Dallas about the Super Bowl, and we're not in it. Really fun. So, okay, guys, we're going to go kind of down 2 tracks. We're going to talk about, as a staff or as an employee, as an organization, how do you start and onboard new hires? And then we're going to talk about at the volunteer level, what would that look like in a church to start volunteers well, to bring them into, say, a ministry context, and kind of the art of the start and how you could do that really well. But before we do that, why do you think this even matters? So Josiah, any thoughts on why we should even pay attention to this?
Yeah, I think onboarding builds buy-in from day one. And so, casting vision is crucial to build that buy-in. So young adults are going to give away their time, treasure, and talent to something that they truly believe in. And so if you're not bleeding that before them, then that buy-in will not happen. So I think that's first and foremost.
Yeah, that's good. And you also did some research just around kind of for organizations and hiring and things like that, the importance of that. You want to share something?
Yeah, so 2 or 3 really stick out to me. Great employee onboarding can improve retention rate by 82%. That's the Brandon Hall Group. And then new employees with good onboarding experiences are 18 times more committed to their employer.
Yeah.
Which is baffling.
Yeah, truly. Well, this week, I ran into somebody and they had just quit. And I was kind of puzzled. I know a little bit about the organization. I said, tell me what happened. And they said, you know what? I had a really bad onboarding experience, and I don't think either one of us ever really recovered. And I thought, wow, that was pretty timely. So it does matter. It really, really does matter how you start. I think, it's a whole lot easier to prevent problems than it is to fix them. And so you can get alignment right out of the gate. You really can. And so you can close that gap as opposed to, 6 months, 2 years saying, hey, we're unaligned. You can do that right at the very beginning. I think as a Christian, as a Christian leader, it is really an expression of love. If we're to be others focused, boy, someone needs you, is insecure, is hoping for some special attention at the start in a way that they may not be 6 to 12 months from now. And so as a Christian, you whether you feel that way or not, whether you want to or not, you put others' needs before your own. And that's both in the church and in both professional setting as well as volunteer setting. And I think it shows really that you are invested in them. You want to develop them. You care about them, which matters now. It really matters now. And so your grandparents, they got a job, they got a desk, and they went to work. And it didn't matter how they felt or if they were developed. They were a cog in the machine, and they were okay with it. And that is not the case now, both at the volunteer level as well as at the staff level. And so this really does matter. And I think if we do this right, we'll get the best from our people, and they will stick around longer. And it really creates the culture and the kind of teams that we're hoping to work with and work on. So, Lainey, let's talk about at Watermark as an employer and what that looks like to start start employees around here. I think you do a phenomenal job. So can you walk us through kind of the process, start to finish? Someone says, I'm going to take the job. And now you are, we've done some different interviewing topics. We've done how to fire people. We've never done how to start them. Why don't you walk us through it? Someone says, hey, I will now agree to work at Watermark. What happens?
Yeah. Changing a job is a big deal. And so whether you're moving from corporate America to the church or moving your family from one city to the next, we want folks to know we're excited to have them here, a part of their team, and we're excited for them to use their gifts here. Yeah. And one way we've started to do that is probably a few days to a week after they sign that offer, they get in the mail what we call our new hire welcome box. Yeah. And so on that front of the box, the first thing they see is welcome to the family. And really that's just, we're excited you're here and going to get to be a part of the team with us. They open it up and it's full of a bunch of swag. Right. And we've really...
Talk us through it. I'm looking at it right here. It's beautifully. Did you design it? Did you design it?
The communications team. There's a whole crew of us that went into the design work
already. I didn't get one of these. Josiah and I didn't get one of these. We may quit and get rehired.
So, we'll see if I rehire
you. That's an excellent question. Would you rehire me if you had the chance? So we're going to talk through what we do. And again, all these episodes, the goal is not for you to replicate exactly what we do. It's to pull out principles and some things. Maybe put your mind on the mental treadmill and go, I wouldn't do it that way, but this gives me a really good idea. That's what you're looking for here. So, okay, Laney, the box is open. Talk us through what's in there and how you go about putting that together.
Yeah. Well, the first thing they're going to see is have a great work week of worship, which is just really a rephrased statement we use around here at the end of every Sunday service. We tell folks to have a great week of worship. And so it's just a fun way to allow folks who have known and heard that phrase to get excited for what their new work week on staff will look like. And then there's a bunch of swag. So we've got some tumblers, shirt, and just really we've taken old swag from past events and repurposed it. We also have a personal letter written by their hiring director welcoming them, telling them they're so excited that they can't wait for them to start. We also have a Waterware redeemable code.
Yeah,
you might be wondering, what is Waterware? Which we do define for new hires because sometimes they don't know. And it's a noun, and it's really branded gifts given to staff at various times through the year. So most common is Christmas or staff retreat, and Waterware is for staff only, which now means you. Yeah. And so it really gets them anticipating their first day that they're going to show up and get a jacket or a piece of swag that they can sport around that only staff get to wear.
That's right.
They also receive a owner's manual. And really our owner's manual is a fancy term for our culture handbook. It really walks people through not just an employee handbook of here are rules and policies and expectations, but what does it look like to be successful here? Yeah. What's a timeline of events that have occurred? We define key terms we use, share things we're not great at. And we even write a letter to introverts on how to survive working on a staff with a bunch of extroverts.
It's so good. We'll put a link to that in the show notes. It's kind of snarky a little bit. It's not probably what you would traditionally, expect from a church in terms of an onboarding manual. So there's that one. We also do have an employee handbook that, I'm sure legally we have to have with all the official rules. But that, at the end of the day, is how to navigate this place and how to win, who we're about, what we're trying to do, and what it's like to be a part of our family. Every family has a set of values, and you can pick them up, over time, but it's nice to know them written down coming in. So good. Anything else in that box, Laney?
A fun surprise at the bottom of the box that folks may not catch is we have the verse from 1 Corinthians 12:12, and just really the reminder that we're all one body, but different members. And so we hired you to be a nose or a mouth or an elbow, and we want you to be a really faithful elbow or mouth or nose. We don't want you to show up on staff and be someone you're not, that in order for this place to be excellent, we have to be deploying the gifts the Lord's given us and to be the member of the body that we were designed to be.
I love it. Well, it's been a great ad, Laney, and I know you drove that, so well done. It's a great way to start people. So, okay, so let's say, Josiah and I just started, we got the box, we come in to staff the first day, we've got our coupon, we're ready to shop, so we're excited about that. What else happens kind of right out of the chute as you're trying to onboard us?
Yeah. Your first week at Watermark is a lot of new hire orientation. So say your typical IT trainings, benefits, expense expense report. You're going to walk through just a lot of nuts and bolts of the things you need to know that first week. As well as someone's first day, they're going to sit down with me for a new hire onboarding meeting. And at that time, they get their swag. They potentially get their backpack already with their initials embroidered on it.
The Watermark backpack.
And then we walk through what does Watermark staff look like from a 60,000-foot view. There are so many different functions, things to learn, and it's a hour-long kind of overview that then we push them towards our Welcome to Watermark online resources that then they go and read within their first week or two being on staff.
Yeah.
And we can share a few of those in the show notes of what are some of the one-pagers and resources we have them read. These are resources from a Watermark, maybe HR, staff care perspective. There's also the onboarding that's more team-specific.
Yeah.
And so how we would encourage teams on day one to welcome their new hire is really bringing them in and introducing them, helping them understand the vision of their specific ministry.
Okay, Lainey, that is the HR side of the house. Traditionally, organizations will call it HR. We call it staff care very intentionally. So that's the things that you're going to be doing from your, kind of your office, from your seat. And then we, as, directors, Josiah, we've got a responsibility then to onboard new employees onto our teams as well. Tell me about what you guys do. Tell me about some best practices that you do that first, week or so with a new employee.
Yeah. So number one, I think we just rally the team and we go to lunch and we just celebrate them and let them know we're excited that they're here. We go around the table and we just say, hey, based on the interviews that we've been a part of with you, this is what we see in you. And it's just a time to affirm them. Mm-hmm. Second, the director will get with the person that they hired and they'll just go through their job description again. Just say, hey, let's align these expectations. Do you have any questions, just to remove any confusion, provide clarity. Clarity is kindness that we say a lot around here. Mm-hmm. And then third, I think this is really important, but we take the top 5 CLC podcasts, what we're doing in this room, and we just send those off to them and say, hey, over the next 4 weeks, would you listen to these podcasts and then just send back 3 or 4 bulleted simple notes that you've taken from each podcast, and then we're going to meet up and talk about those. So those are just 3 quick ways that we try to onboard new employees to our team.
That's fantastic. Yeah, we'll link to those just so you can share which ones you guys feel like are important for your new hires.
Sure.
We'll list those in the show notes. So again, you just remember what it's like to be new. It's so hard because you're there, you know where everything, you know where the copier is, you know where all the stuff is in the closets, you know everyone's names, and they are brand new. And so just remember what it would be like to be brand new and be a really, really great host that week, that month. Lainey, I think you really think about your role in terms of starting someone in kind of not a week, but more like a 90-day chunk.
Yeah.
So what else happens during the first 90 days for a new employee at Watermark?
Yeah, I would say one of those is at 90 days, a new hire receives a survey, and really they're sharing feedback on what was their HR staff care onboarding like? What was your team-specific training for your role? How was your onboarding in terms of our culture, feeling a part of the team? Do you feel a part of the team? And what are things maybe in our mission or values that we state that seem confusing to you or you think we can continue to improve? And after they complete that survey, I get to sit down with all the female new hires and really learn, how was their experience? Was the job we interviewed you for the job you feel like you've been doing for the past 90 days?
So good.
Do you feel a part of this team, and how can I help you as you're continuing to plug in and grow deeper roots on this staff?
So good. That's such a great practice. There'll always be a gap in expectations, and they're much easier to close there. And that's the kind of stuff when someone decides a year from now, they don't want to be here. It actually probably started in the first 90 days, and you can close that down. So just think about that as a leader. What is it that you can do to close the expectation gap and really give people a voice and let them ask the questions and make sure that you're aligned? So one other fun thing I think we've added recently is Culture Camp. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So Culture Camp is an idea really that was dreamed up by me and Bron Brown. So he's our director of Watermark Institute and kind of our quote unquote Watermark culture keeper.
Yep.
And we are thinking through, how do we take this owner's manual, our values, and these terms and just what it looks like to be successful here and really teach it to new hires and not expect them to pick it up or just understand the information simply from reading a handbook and reading our resources. So it's a day long of a lot of fun where we bring in various leaders and we farkle together. We play games. We help them understand what does success look like on this team. How do you resolve conflict and what are tools to help you navigate that as it comes up on your team. And so really the heart of this day is to allow new hires to better learn and apply our vision and values, as well as deepen friendships among one another across staff, where new hires are still getting to know folks. And this allows them to build a friendship with someone on a different floor, a different team, and just friendships and connections at work also keep people there. Yeah. And we want to help folks feel like they're working alongside friends, not just coworkers.
Excellent. Well, it's been really fun, Lainey, to watch your leadership the last couple of years as you've improved this process, and it's part of what makes this place great. So thank you. And we'll list some of those things that Lainey talked about in the show notes. And so that's what we do for Watermark as an employer. That's what that would look like if you're going to get a paycheck from Watermark and be a pastor or be a director here on our staff. That is how we start people. But many of us, Josiah, we don't just have employees. A lot of people in the church are going to lead volunteer teams. And a lot of times we really don't think about what it looks like to onboard new volunteers. From my perspective, I think you guys do, if not the best, one of the best jobs in our church. It's a pretty robust strategy, so we're going to talk about that. So don't get overwhelmed. But let me just say this, Josiah, just to encourage you. I was at another church that streams the Porch. They partner with the Porch. They're one of our Porch Live locations. And they told me that they had been so encouraged by the Porch volunteers and the way the engagement, the ownership, and really the process that produced that they were replicating that throughout all the other ministries in their church in their own unique way. So way to go, both at this place and then your influence in other churches here. But why don't you walk us through that? Again, this thing is intense. Whatever you're thinking about young adults, it's not just a cup of coffee and go get them. You've got a very, very thoughtful plan. Why don't you walk us through that and help these listeners pick out some best practices?
Yeah, well, thanks for that, John. That's encouraging, and man, we're humbled by that. And I would just say, I think we're learning from people like Lainey, who has basically walked us through not just paperwork and processes, but how to be personal in our onboarding. Yep. One of the stats that sticks out to me, I'll be the stat guy today, by the way.
Which I didn't see coming.
58% of organizations say that their onboarding program is focused on processes and paperwork. Huh. And it's important to have that. But I think a lot of times when we think about onboarding, we do think about processes and paperwork, which is vital to an organization structure, that sort of thing. But I think where we're thriving is by being personal with every volunteer leader that wants to come through the Porch. And so I'm going to sound hypocritical here, but I'm going to turn a corner. The first step to onboarding our volunteer leaders is through an online application. So that is paperwork, that's a process, but it's where we get a glimpse of their grasp of the gospel and currently their walk with the Lord. And so they sign leadership expectations, commitment, and we get to refer back to that over the year. But right after they sign up to serve at the Porch through filling out that application, we do a one-to-one interview. Mm-hmm. And that interview is just where we assess their intention, for leading. Like we can't assess their execution of leading, but we get to assess their intention. And so we get to ask questions, personal questions, like, what is your testimony? What does your time with Jesus look like? Hey, what is the gospel? We don't just assume that, hey, just because you're signing up to serve at the Porch, you know the gospel. And how would you explain that to a young adult? Because every person that serves at the Porch, we want them to be a pastor to their peers. I think this generation, and I'm going to digress for a second, but this generation doesn't just want to open a door or pass out a program or park a car or usher someone to the seat. They truly want to, they're asking, hey, can the Lord use my life to change the world? And so we want them, step one, just to know that they're not just here to accomplish a task, but they're here to pursue a person. So we ask them these intentional questions. Hey, why do you want to serve at the Porch? So that's just managing their intention, not even managing it, but trying to understand their intention of wanting to serve at the Porch. And then I think the second step in that interview process is we're just trying to vision cast. I don't like the word volunteer, primarily because I think it carries a lot of task with that word. So we kind of nixed it. And sometimes we will, in this setting like this, we'll say volunteer leaders, but we call all of our volunteers, leaders, because leaders, that's associated with people, leading somebody. And we want to make our ministry leadership about people. And so then I think the third thing we do is we set expectations. 1 Corinthians 11:1 says, follow me for I follow Christ. That's Paul, right? And so we're not expecting perfection out of our leaders. We're expecting them to be able to say with integrity, hey, follow me because I'm following Christ, not perfectly. So we talk about living above reproach. We talk about, hey, what does alcohol look like for you? What is purity, boundaries when you're dating in a dating relationship, modesty, social media, porn, masturbation. Like, I just assume that guys are struggling with that. So I just ask them, hey, when's the last time you looked at pornography? And we just have a frank conversation. And again, we're not looking for perfection, but we're looking for people who want to, fight the battle well, and want to lead out with a limp and say, hey, I'm not perfect, but I'm struggling well. And then lastly, we talk about the commitment. How has commitment marked your past? What does that look like? Are you filled with broken commitments? If I was to ask your community group, would they say, no, this is a man that is marked by commitment? What you do in your single years directly affects what you're going to do when you get married. So I'm giving them a vision of a preferred future that affects their present reality. And just say, hey, do you want to be a man that is marked by commitment in your marriage with your kid? Most of them want to get married and have kids. So I'm just sharing, hey, this is why we're talking about these things today. So that's step number one.
That's good. Really, really good. Well, their ministry is not of the porch is not just to the people that are in the seats. And if someone doesn't have a context of the porch, this is a very, very large young adult ministry. 3,000 plus people on a Tuesday that come, and Josiah and the team do an amazing job. So a lot of times you think about the ministry being to everyone that's there in the seats. And one of the things I really appreciate about your team is you almost feel like your first ministry is to all of those that are leading there. And so they're just not, again, we talked about cogs in the machine. They're not. They're actually some of the very first people that you pastor and shepherd. You don't just quote unquote use them, but there is a high bar, and you get a lot back from them. You really do. There is something about, I'm excited for them to hear about the process, but I will tell you the end result is that Porch volunteers are committed. They are committed, and they are excited. They believe in the ministry. They will, metaphorically bleed out for whatever is in front of them that is attached to the ministry that and the vision that you've created. And we used to do the big event called Awaken. We're taking a year off. We might come back next year. So the young adult gathering from all around the world, really. And the young adult volunteers, young adult leaders, really put that thing on. There's some staff things that had to be done, but by and large, it was the young adults that pulled it off. And I remember after the fact, telling you and some of the other leaders involved, I think a porch volunteer, they count twice.
That's right.
They count twice. They count twice as much as anybody else because they're just so committed. They're so bought in. And that comes from, I think, right out of the gate, some of the conversations you're having with them that you really do care about them. You really are developing them. And they're bought in, brother. And it's really, really fun to see. And
well, you coined that phrase, and now we use it almost every week.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So let's talk about some of the tactics then.
Yeah.
You've met with them. You've done a great job. And again, it's so much easier to kind of surface that stuff then and deal with it than much, much later when they're giving counsel to people that they're in rooms that you're not in. You want to know all those things that you ask, and you want to know their motives. I think you hinted at that, but why do they want to serve? That's really, really important. No one's motives can be 100% pure, but you need to make sure that they're not trying to fill a gap in their own, spiritual development. They're not trying to make penance for something that they've done. That they really do want to be on mission. So let's talk through some of the specifics. You've met with me. You think I'm a good fit. I think I want to be a part of this. Then what?
Yeah, so we say, hey, go back to your community group, because everyone that serves at the porch is in a community group. They're a member of Watermark Community Church. So we say, hey, go back to your community group, let them know, hey, this is what you're wanting to do. We're going to approve you to serve the porch. One more step in the process, because that's the covering over their life, we believe, is just say, go back and ask them if this is the next best step for you. And if it is, then let's go. Let's onboard you into Roundabout, which is our 10-week training. Now we get to assess the execution of their intention. So the Roundabout interview, 1-to-1, and the application, that's assessing their intention. Over 10 weeks, we take them through a training where we're assessing their execution. Is what they're saying really going to play out in their life? Because I think a lot of times leadership is aspirational. hey, I want to do this, but it just kind of stays up in the clouds. And this is an opportunity for us to say, hey, are you about it? And so once they get onboarded into Roundabout, express value and love to the person. We say, hey, we're going to invest in you because you're going to invest in others. So over the next 10 weeks, we're equipping them in how to share the gospel biblically and effectively. We're equipping them in how to share their testimony in 3 minutes or less. We're equipping them with how to be a great host versus a guest and changing that mentality. And then also just in how to have spiritual conversations with people that are coming through our doors. So they get to shadow all 6 teams that serve at the porch. They get to go to an all-leader meeting. We do those the first Tuesday of every month. So they'll come and get to shadow that and even just jump right in. And then they get to meet all of our staff. We do a green room visit where we take them back to the green room before the service, and they get to meet all of our staff. They get to ask questions to us like, hey, where'd you get your shoes? What kind of style you got? Because it looks good, or hey, it ain't that great. But just all across the board, they get to just come in and get to know us. That's that personal element that we're talking about. It just doesn't want to be about processes and paperwork. And then over the course of those 10 weeks, they meet one-on-one with either the team lead of Roundabout or the sub-team lead. So it's another one-on-one, just, hey, how's it going? Touch point throughout those 10 weeks. Hey, is this something that you're continuing to buy into? This is what I see. You were late actually 4 of the last 5 weeks. Let's talk about that. And just being able to share about their execution and really not just the outward of their execution, but get down to the heart of the matter if there is a problem, or just celebrate. Hey, bro, you've been crushing it. Like I see you out, not just caring about the task of Tuesday night, but man, you're sharing the gospel. You're always back sharing wins with us at the end of the night. And so it just gives us an opportunity to see what they're about over those 10 weeks. And then the last week of Roundabout is actually a stand and deliver. It's like a test. A few years ago, we had a written test, and we just said, hey, anyone can kind of do a written test, but to really know if they learn the material, let's have them do a stand and deliver. So, they'll come in and go before the team leads and sub-team leads, and they'll just fire out questions. Hey, what's Romans 3:23? What's Romans 6:23? Hey, if you're going to be a great host, what are the 4 key components to be a great host? Hey, if someone has come up to you and said, hey, I'm an atheist, but I'm examining Christ, how are you going to lead them? And so it's just an opportunity for them to see, hey, what they learned over the last 10 weeks and be able to articulate that. So it's fun, man.
I love that.
I enjoy it.
I've got one of my sons is pledging right now in college. And the amount of things he has to memorize, about all the core values and mission statements and chants and pledges and, this whole world that I'm not really familiar with. It's amazing. I mean, he will spend a lot of his weekends, just going back over these things.
Yeah.
And I thought about this, and I just remembered, but I thought about, we will let anybody serve in the church, and but to become, a member of a frat, you're going to have to memorize all kinds of content and know it backwards and forwards. And I thought that probably shouldn't be the case. And so, Roundabout is that process. You can use that process. You can use any process, but just have a process. And then I would just say this too, it's pretty robust. It's a very high bar. And I think for some of your ministries, you really do want to have a high bar. Now there may be, that bar might be so high for some people in your church, they just go, I can't even conceive of jumping over that. So you probably do want to create other service opportunities, other ways to volunteer that may not be so cumbersome, and get them in and still stay close, some of the same principles, and then allow them to kind of get their feet under them, mature in Christ, and then become, some of the, you guys they're like Navy SEALs, of volunteers. You can drop them into any situation and they know what to do. But I love that. You didn't dumb it down. So the porch is known for a lot of things that are very visible above the waterline, things like the communication. Social media is just ridiculously relevant. But every time I hear you and others talk about the porch, they say, actually the secret is the volunteers.
Yeah.
The secret's the volunteers. And it's not the worship, and it's not all the things that you would see above the waterline. It's the people you will never see that are what makes all of this go. And so well done.
You could take out our staff tomorrow, and I think the porch would still run. Yeah. Because there's 200 plus faithful volunteer leaders that are getting after it week in and week out. Yeah. But if you take out our volunteers, it's no more porch. Yeah. We actually shared that last week in our all-leader meeting.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hey, anything else? Any other best practices? Any other potential roadblocks? Any other kind of parting shots here?
Yeah, I think it's one thing to train people, but it's another thing to hold them accountable to apply the training. It's not information that equals transformation. It's information plus application equals transformation. So it's, Roundabout is on Tuesday night before the porch for about 40 minutes. And then they have the next 2 hours, from the service to after the service to go apply it. Before the service, they're mixing up with people coming in. After the service, they're, pursuing people, trying to engage in spiritual conversations. And then they huddle up for about 15 minutes at the end of the night, and they just say, okay, what did God do?
Yeah.
Let's share wins.
Celebrate.
Yeah. And so it's just it's a way for people to see that this is possible. Even if I just went up and introduced myself, that's where it starts, really, week one of Roundabout. Just go introduce yourself to someone that you don't know and start flexing the muscle that you've never really flexed before in leadership. And I think that's important. And then two, I would say, hey, once they get onboarded to their teams, we onboard them based on needs first, gifts second. Because we're trying to test the heart of why they're truly serving.
Good.
Are they just wanting to come serve just to put their gifts in motion, or do they want to serve because there's needs?
Yeah.
And so needs first, gifts second, and then once they're on a team, we pair them up with a porch veteran who's been serving for quite a while, and over the next 4 weeks, they're shadowing them. And that person is just coming alongside of them. Do you have any questions? They're seeing him getting after it or her getting after it on a Tuesday night, sharing the gospel and being a great host. And then they're meeting with them at least once over those 4 weeks, one-on-one, and just saying, hey, what's going on? How you doing? And that way it just allows that person not to get lost in the shuffle or in the transition, if you will. And so those are just, I think, some best practices that we've learned over our time in leading at the porch.
So good. So good. Well, the fruits of that, really felt far and wide, brother. So you've done a great job with that. I think the other thing you didn't talk about a lot, but just a sense of community you created with that, and pretty instantly, I think maybe one of the best ways to get into the life and ministry of the church at Watermark, be connected, is to be a volunteer with you. So you've created this really great sense of community that, because of all those different touch points that you have, that makes it really, really sticky. People will want to come, and they don't want to not be a volunteer with the porch because of what you've created, which is just so fantastic. So both of you, thank you. You've really done an excellent job. Your perspective kind of post, and I hope as you're listening to this, you're going to find something there that you can implement. If you don't know where to start, I would always just go interview the last 3 people that you hired, or the last 3 people that became a volunteer in your ministry, and ask them what they wish they would have had, what went well, what do you want to make sure that you keep doing, and then what do they wish they would have had. If they could design the perfect onboarding process, what would that look like? I bet you can't do it all, but I bet you can take some next steps. I know both of you have some things we don't have time that you're still thinking about. You're not done. You're always improving, always tweaking, which is a great practice.
Come to CLC. It's coming up. We'll give you the full gamut.
There you go. You can meet Josiah, and hopefully they're going to give you a really hard time if the Chiefs lose, brother.
They will. Hey, go Chiefs.
You've been so vocal this week.
Patrick Mahomes' jersey is in the house right now, and I'm just flaunting.
Yes.
Come on.
So give him a really, just don't say anything if they win, but give him a really hard time if they lose. So thank you, friends, for sharing. Thank you for the ways that you've modeled all this. And then hopefully, if you're listening to this, hopefully you will see the volunteers or the people that you hire as a real stewardship opportunity. And you'll take it very, very seriously, and you will make sure that you are not only deploying them well, but you are onboarding them well, and making the best use of the incredible opportunity you have to steward the life of another person. So, friends, if you have any other questions or you have any thoughts for future episodes, you can always reach us at clp@watermark.org. That's clp@watermark.org. We'll talk to you again next time.